Welcome back to Talking Europe. 5,800,000. Those figures. People waiting in Libya, ready to make the often deadly journey across the Mediterranean to Europe. The numbers are estimates from the EU Foreign Policy Chief and the French Defence Minister. In recent months, the EU focus has been on Greece and trying to dissuade tens of thousands of mostly war refugees fleeing Syria from making the journey across the Aegean. On March 18th, the EU signed a deal with Turkey that would send people back. Since then, numbers arriving into Greek islands has declined, but reports about people arriving from Libya have increased. In the first 3 months of the year, almost 15,000 travelled from there to Italy. Well, with us in studio, we have former Italian Prime Minister, Mr. Enrico Letta. Mr. Letta, thanks for your time. Tell me, we're talking increasingly about these numbers arriving into Italy, not from Turkey's direction, from Libya. Do you think this is a real increase, or is it just an ongoing pattern that we're now focusing on again?
I think it is a real increase, but first of all, because we have to know that a solution to the migrant crisis, it is not just to stop the routes, because if you stop one route, the other one open up, and it is exactly what's happened after the Turkish deal, and the fact that on the Balkan route today we have a deal with Turkey. That's good, that's positive, but it is just a step, a small step. For a global solution, we need, in my view, other tools. We need to have a toolbox, and we didn't have.
So this EU-Turkey deal, are there now Syrians travelling across other directions to get to Libya and then into the EU that way, do you think?
I think it will be in the future, yes. It is not now. Now it's the Libyan crisis, the fact that in Libya today the situation is completely out of any control, and we heard Mogherini and the European Union warning about the figures, the numbers there, and the risk to have a summer without control. This is why I think the only possibility is to have a global solution. It is impossible to continue thinking that we can have national solutions to the migrant crisis. The only possibility is that the European Union starts, and the European countries starts to build the famous toolbox. We don't have until now the toolbox, and we need to have it.
Well, we're going to discuss that toolbox in this show, but just before we do, let's give people a visual reminder of what exactly the situation is on the ground for these new migrants arriving into the European Union.
Sicily, March 2016, and hundreds of migrants are rescued by the Italian Coast Guard. Since the start of the year, the UN says 14,500 people have arrived here from Libya, 42% more than in the same period last year. Yet with Europe recently shifting its attention to the Balkans route through Greece and Turkey, Libya's remained somewhat under the radar. According to EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, there's at least 500,000 people camped out on the other side of the Mediterranean, waiting to make the often deadly trip. These migrants are often economic ones, and so won't qualify for asylum in the EU.
The refugee status, asylum's right, can be granted only to the ones who are in clear need of international protection. We must separate the irregular migrants from the refugees.
Refugees already in Europe, however, are often left to their own devices. Some 11,000 people are still stranded at the Indomeni camp in the hope Macedonia will reopen a border it closed over a month ago.
I'm planning to not plan. I'm thinking about not thinking. It makes me feel like, at least not sad, but it's making me feel like I'm alive.
Over 50,000 refugees and migrants are currently stranded in Greece, a number that's nearly doubled since the Balkan states began closing their borders in late February.
And now, Mr. Letta, there's a lot of different routes, as we were saying, different reasons people are migrating. A lot of the people, though, in Libya at the minute come from Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, a lot of them economic migrants. They won't get the asylum being offered to those from Syria. So what will actually happen? Are we going to send them back? I know that the number of people sent back from the EU is very, very little.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I would say it's almost impossible to send him back. The point is the toolbox. You remember in 2008, we were
Took a while as well.
completely without any toolbox for the euro crisis. We took 2, 3, 4 years, and the crisis was so tough because of the lack of the toolbox. Now we have the toolbox on euro, but we don't have any toolbox on migrants. We have to build it.
And it looks like the euro is still struggling in certain areas. We may get onto that. But what do we need to put in this toolbox for the migrant crisis then? And why aren't we doing it already?
First of all, we need to securize the external borders of the European Union. To keep the internal borders free and not to have new walls among us, that would be a disaster for competitiveness, economy, and also for freedom in Europe. We need to securize the borders, the external borders. How to do it? We need to have a border control police, a European border control police, 5,000 people.
Would Italy be willing to let foreign police?
I think it is necessary to do it. If not, the lack of confidence between countries will raise. The Germans will say the Greeks are not taking the control of their borders, and it will be a disaster, and the consequence will be the raise of borders among us. So we need to build this border control police. In my view, is the first, because it's the first also tool to say to our citizens, we are protecting you. We think that you have to be protected. Second, we have to harmonize the rules for the asylum and for all these seeking asylum demands.
Until now, major divisions.
Yeah, 28 different systems. I think it's unbelievable. So is the second main point. The third one is the relationship with the origin countries. The only possibility is to do it at European level. There is no national solution to the migrant crisis.
It's a bit of the problem in the EU in general. We have that division between national needs or wants or perceptions and the common goal. But you talk there a three-pronged approach. That sounds like the long-term solution, because indeed the migrant crisis is not new and it's not going to end overnight. But what can be done in the short term? I mean, we're seeing tens of thousands of people arrive into Italy. We already have the largest EU migrant centre in Italy.
But for instance, in immediate terms, we have to implement in a serious way, not for just few steps, the hotspots program. The hotspots program is a good one, in my view. That means putting money there is the only way to organize the asylum seeking demands, a list of demand, and to distribute it. If not, it will be like today.
And hotspots in the EU.
In the EU and at the border of the European Union. This is one of the reasons why until now the situation is so out of control.
There's one thing, it's out of control, but also how did we not see this coming? You know, you were Prime Minister in 2013, 2014. Did you not see alarm bells? Was there alarm bells being sent to Brussels?
Frankly speaking, at this point, just Italy or maybe Greece, we were asking for a top-level solution at European level. Nobody was saying that, yes, is a problem. I remember we spent a lot of European councils in 13 and 14 discussing about euro economy and so on and so forth. Just 5 minutes at the end, migrants discussions.
People didn't want to watch, didn't want to listen because it concerned two countries?
It was just an Italian problem.
Okay.
Now the problem is a global one, is a German problem, so it becomes a European problem. But it was a European problem so 2 years ago. But now I don't want to speak about the past. The problem is how to get solutions now, and how also to say to the Eastern European countries, you can't continue with a way to deal with this problem that is unacceptable.
What is the solution on that? I mean, does the EU need to put sanctions on countries? Does it need to rule by majority?
The only possibility is to have this toolbox at the European stage with decisions.
But nobody will sign up to that. The thing is,
binding decision for every country.
But you will never get all 28 countries signing up to that toolbox.
But there are consequences if somebody refuses to stay on these solutions. It is impossible to continue in a situation in which Orban or Fico, the Hungarian or the Slovakian Prime Minister, they think to stay in a European Union in which they get only what is positive for them.
So the rest
it is not that This is not the idea of Europe. You know, the idea of Europe since the beginning was the word solidarity. But solidarity is a word with different meanings. And if you say solidarity is a bad word, there is not Europe.
Okay, so that's, well, the latest part of the solution that Europe has proposed is this deal with Turkey, starting to send people back to Turkey if they try and make it across the Aegean into Greece. What do you think of that? I mean, it hasn't helped Italy's problem, really. Has it made it better for the EU in general? Is it fair on the people fleeing war zones?
We were in the eye of the storm, so it was necessary to find a brief solution. But the key point is that this solution is not a long-term solution. That is very clear. So it is good to have a deal with Turkey. It is positive. I fear that the terrorist attacks will create some problems in our public opinion, because one part of the deal with Turkey is the visa liberalization. So, but this is why there's a link between security and migrations. This is why, for instance, we have to face what is happening on security by saying there is no national solutions against these terrorists, only a European solution. You know, what happened between France and Belgium, security, information, intelligence, is the demonstration that it is impossible to find a long-term and strong solution to terrorism without an FBI, a European FBI. We have to build it.
Well, indeed, you're saying that the EU, for you at least, is about solidarity and sharing and being one. However, this isn't working. I know you have an idea of having not a two-speed Europe, but kind of two circles going in different directions.
You know, Brexit referendum is shaking Europe. And I'm sure that the next 2 months, the Brexit referendum will be the top problem in Europe, because Brexit will be, in my view, the first step of the European decline.
Yeah.
So we have to avoid Brexit. The only possibility to avoid Brexit is to have a two-circle Europe. The core Europe, the Europe of the Eurozone, with a further integration and the possibility to have not only the monetary union but also the economic union. That is the only way to have the possibility for the euro to be competitive. And the second circle, a larger circle in which the UK can stay, and other also, I don't know, maybe Switzerland and Norway, countries with a link with the euro area, but countries not with the destination to have an ever closer union. Okay. Countries sharing some policies like the single market, like foreign trade, more on economic terms.
Not a eurozone, but more economic.
Exactly. That is, in my view, the good idea for the future.
So the Eurozone 19, that circle, would also be a political union, or are we just down to money?
I think we need a political union. And the political union can be done only at the euro area level. So the former founder countries plus some other countries is the only possibility to have the European Union, the euro idea working and delivering.
And we've looked at that Eurozone crisis. You sounded quite positive at the start of this show, saying, well, we made a toolbox and we've dealt with that. But we're not really out of the woods fully, are we? I mean, Greece is still desperately struggling economic-wise. Italian banks lost 40% of stock market value in the last year.
I'm not pessimistic on this topic, because I think that we have the toolbox today to face a new crisis in Greece or bank crisis. Work, jobs, and we need to beat the youth unemployment. That is the key point. So we need European policies there on these topics. If not, it will be impossible to sell Europe to our citizens.
And do you think for as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, I know that Italy has already talked about pulling its finance from that financial hub in London. Do you think that would happen? Do you think the financial hub as we know it would?
You know, if Brexit, it would be absolutely a consequence. It is a natural consequence that London will lose, I think, the centrality that London has today. One of the strengths of London is to be the main door to the single market. And the single market is the richest market in the world. So London's strength, it is not only because of good rules, good governance, competitiveness of the UK. The British, they are very pragmatic always. They have to know that their competitiveness, their performances are also because of they are part of the single market, not because they are out of the single market. They will be poorer out of the single market.
Now, we've talked there about the toolbox on a number of different crises. Do you think the EU can actually manage all these crises at the same time?
I don't think the European Union can manage all these crises at the same time if we don't have European leaders. And if we have just national leaders that once per month are European leaders. We need, on the political level, to have a different burden sharing between a European leadership and national leadership.
Okay, well, the message is clear then. We need unity on most of our main crises. Mr. Enrico Letta, thanks so much for your time. Thanks also to you at home for having watched. That brings us to the end of this part of Talking Europe.